Hey y'all, Scott here. Holding a gobble. It's Wednesday, alright. You know, it's moments like this that really makes me appreciate collecting video games. Like, where would I be without that? Hey y'all, Scott here. Where the f is Gubble? Buying video games is my #1 favorite pastime. Playing them is a close 13th. Having just a big fat wall of all things lonely is so satisfying. Being able to walk in here and have endless entertainment at your disposal while also having stories and memories linked to each and every piece of your collection. See, I think a lot of people have that mentality, even if they're just casually buying games. But I think things truly get serious when you really care about the condition of your minute to win it case. Face it, you're a video game collector. No! And game collecting isn't the worst hobby to get into. I mean, think about it. You could spend $60 a week on a game you may or may not play. Or you could be a fan of Homicide, things could be worse. Now, do I get joy out of the fact that I have this many games and I've only played like 2 of them? Well, I have intentions to play through the majority of these games, and I've at the very least given them all a try. I've made miraculous progress with that. I played through a game and there we go, check this one off the list, and then I buy Monsters Inc. for PlayStation 2. I'm never gonna get through these, aren't I? But that's the beauty and horror of video game collecting. There's no true end to it. There's subsets of things to collect. You can collect all the games for one console, or collect all the variations of a console in general. You can make sure you have all the boxes, all the games in a certain series, or just collect the games you're interested in. There's no true right or wrong way to collect video games. Yeah, I may consider those who throw away the cases and keep the discs in a binder to be Stalin 2.0, but that's how they want to do it. They don't affect me in any way at all. Game collecting doesn't necessarily have any rhyme or reason to it. It just sort of happens. One day you're hanging out with Brink, 7 years later, what happened to me? And I will say this, game collecting does quite a bit to a man. You save all your game boxes for collecting purposes, and then when you buy a hairdryer, oh man, should I save the packaging? But I wouldn't have an entire room look like this if I didn't enjoy it. So let's talk the ins and outs of the hobby. And for me, it all started on that fateful day in 2013 when I looked at my copy of Forza 3 and said, I'm keeping this. It was a big moment. I haven't played it since. I'd say my fascination with gaming and the history of the medium started back in 2008, and it wasn't until 2013 when I decided against selling my current games in order to fund buying new ones. Trading in games was the way of life for a while, but I said no, I want to start hoarding. Video games, in my opinion, are things that deserve to be collected more so than many other forms of media. You can experience pretty much every movie ever made in the best way possible by just owning them all on a flash drive. The same can be said for music and books. Sure, enthusiasts prefer experiencing them in more unconventional ways, like listening to vinyl records or reading the first print edition of a novel. But video games are a completely different story to me. These are much more complex pieces of entertainment that require specific hardware. You almost have to own the original physical releases and the original hardware they were designed to be played on to get the full experience, or just the experience at all. This field is not nearly as well preserved as others, and it's practically screaming to be. The idea that all these consoles will one day die out on us and these discs will eventually rot away or these cartridges will just stop working, it really makes me feel like collecting games is more important than collecting other things. I feel much more inclined to collect and almost try to preserve these myself. Sure, old games are re-released on modern platforms all the time, and fans rip the game files and pop them online for people to download. These games get preserved in one way or another. But there's something about playing a game on the original console with the original controller, having the original case and artwork, the manual, plus having a lot of these games on a bookshelf looks fun, so I bought more. I think going online and seeing all these game room tours and collection overviews people would post made me really want that for myself. Every week I'd head to the retro game store closest to me and buy whatever caught my attention, and, get this, was also dirt cheap. That's why my game collection at the start consisted of Wheel of Fortune and Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing. Come on, when I found this, it was a Super Nintendo game in the box, and it was $2. I'd be an idiot not to buy that, right? You don't have to say right back, I knew you were thinking it. I think the idea of just enjoying buying these games, regardless of their value, kept collecting from ever getting stale for me. I feel like if you're only interested in collecting the expensive stuff because they're expensive, the motives to collect feel much more hollow. It doesn't feel like you want to own a game because it's a game you want or you think is cool. It feels like you only want it because of its monetary value. Like, I remember when I went to a retro game store for the first time. This was my first experience seeing a Super Nintendo cartridge for sale. It was literally so cool seeing it, and I don't know why. The label was much smaller than I imagined. It was in great condition, and it was $20, the exact amount I had in my wallet. I didn't buy it. I didn't have a Super Nintendo at the time. Why would I? This was back in 2009, 2010 or something, and when I was starting to get actively interested in retro video games. The Super Nintendo was always seen as the greatest system of all time, and seeing Super Mario All-Stars on a shelf really resonated with me, and I've kind of had that mentality with collecting ever since. It's cool to see this stuff in person, regardless of what it is or how much it costs. I usually always value the history of these games and what they represent, even if there's barely much to them. I of course think it's cool to own rare and valuable titles, but that's not exactly what I'm specifically out here to do. I like buying games that I can actually see myself playing and enjoying, or games that were prolific titles in that console's library. Basically, I buy games I'm legitimately interested in. But then there's this stuff that's just so stupid. I love them. I buy what I like. Of course, I feel there are certain games that are a must-have for any video game collector, but just because a game's value is worth $1, it doesn't mean it's inherently less valuable to me personally than a game that's worth $10. I think that keeps the experience of collecting far more enjoyable and more fulfilling. When I was first starting to collect games, I kind of just went with what I could afford, but also still wanted. That meant filling out the Xbox 360 and Wii libraries alongside the nosebleeds of NES games. Yeah, Ghostbusters, one of my first NES games. I had a couple of quarters left over in my car. But as time went on, the collection started to fill out. Every now and then I picked up the must-have games any game collector needed if they were available at a store I was visiting and at a reasonable price, and 7 years later, can you tell I'm not Amish? I have been more than happy with my collection for a few years now, probably ever since 2017, 2018. I have most of the games that I really wanted back when I started. Plus nearly all of the North American Wii U games. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. Of course, there's always going to be stuff I want that I don't have, but at this moment, I have most of the stuff that I needed. And that, of course, means everything I add to this collection from this point forward kind of feels like overflow. None of this was ever necessary to own. Everything I bought this year so far is the definition of unnecessary to own. That's a problem many collectors have once they've been doing this for a while, and many have a desire to cut back. I don't really have an urge to do that though. I feel like that happens when you buy like sacks of games online to get an overall better deal. The idea behind that is you'd be spending overall less on each game by buying in bulk, and you'd be getting multiple games to fill your collection out. The thing is, I never really did that because I kinda liked buying each game separately. I bought most of these games because I deliberately wanted to own them. When you buy 50 NES games on eBay because you wanted one of them and the other 49 are just gonna be filling your collection, yeah, you're probably getting a better deal, but I feel like it's more likely to feel disconnected from your library this way. I mean, of course I bought a few lots before, and because of that I keep forgetting I own some of these. Come on, Missile Command on Game Boy Color? My collection has standards, I swear. That's another issue. Forgetting you own some games. When you get to a point in your collecting habits, you may accidentally buy Bloodstone twice. That's why some collectors create a spreadsheet or use a service to catalog their collection. See, I randomly get the urge to do this sometimes. I list all my games once and then I never update it. It makes collecting seem more like a job than a hobby, and that's no fun. I just do this because I love games, but for some reason, many people look at collecting as if it's a skill. Like if anybody ever asked me, oh wow, how did you achieve all this? I spent money. But see, people always have questions about the game collecting experience, so might as well enter the first chapter. Where do I begin? I hear way too many people ask, how do I get into collecting? What the hell kind of a question is that? Just do it. How do you complete transactions? Okay, that will be $10 for Donkey Kong? What the f do I do? Do you really think this was all strategized? No, I just bought games and didn't sell them for 7 years. I think something a lot of aspiring collectors ask though, is what to collect first. I got started just collecting for the systems I owned at the time. The Wii, 360, Wii U, GameCube, 3DS, DS. Whenever I see people ask others, where do I get started with collecting? Why do you want to be this? If anybody ever answers with, oh, the NES, you gotta start with the original NES or any other console, well, why? What if this person doesn't care about that system at this time? If they think they have to collect for a specific system they may not care about to truly get into collecting, that's not necessarily fun for them. Collect for the systems you like the most, the systems you have at this exact moment. It doesn't matter if the general consensus is collecting Xbox One games is for pussies. If that's the system you own and you're passionate about it, there's no reason why that shouldn't be the first console you start collecting for. And as time goes on, you'll probably end up expanding to collecting more things and appreciating consoles and libraries you may not have cared about initially. I can tell you back in 2013, I never expected in a million years I would have owned Glover. Look at me now. I feel like there's this notion that game collecting has to be this way or that way or whatever, and that's just not the case. You collect what you're interested in regardless of how old, how new, how expensive, or how cheap it is. But of course, what you're able to collect depends on what you're able to collect. Write that down. Alright, if we're collecting new games, keep this in mind. If you want the most bang for your buck, getting games as cheaply as possible throughout the year, make sure to study prices on games on shopping websites and all the deals in general. You will start to notice patterns. How a lot of multi-platform games on PlayStation and Xbox consoles drop in value fairly quickly. The games will go from $60 to $30 just like that. Exclusive titles on these platforms may take slightly longer to go on sale, but a lot of the times they'll get permanent price cuts around a year after release.
and then Nintendo games never go on sale, you might as well buy them now. I mean, it happens, but not nearly as much as the other consoles. I just think it's worth it to follow a few gaming deals-oriented websites, checking them out from time to time. You'll eventually gain an understanding of how and when video game prices go down. It may also be worth it to join some store memberships. Many of them are free and you'll get rewarded for being an idiot with money.
Now, of course, current generation titles are more than likely easy to come by for you. You can easily ransack a Best Buy to grab them, but what about the fossils?
Of course, if you're in the market for games over 15 years old, you may experience some roadblocks. Retro games aren't easily found at stores like Walmart and Target. I mean, sure, you have the coveted PlayStation 2 game that's been on the shelf for 40 years, but you should never buy them. Nobody will ever buy them. That's their shtick. That's where the specialty shops and online harassment show their faces. Look up retro game stores near you. If you have some, great! Let's pray they actually have good prices. If you don't have any stores near you, look up the games you want on eBay. Let's pray they actually have good prices. I've gone to a fair share of retro game stores in my day, and they vary quite a bit in terms of quality. There was one that I went to that was incredible. They had nearly every game you could have possibly asked for available. Tons of displays and playable kiosks. Collectibles were everywhere. New things around every corner. They were asking $10 for Rock Band game only. When I went to buy a few things, the cashier told me, "Oh yeah, we're all about the collectors here," and proceeded to stamp the game disc for some bullshit warranty service. What the hell are you doing? But at least the store was a spectacle. Even if the prices were garbage, it was cool to check out. But then you have the stores that have absolutely nothing going for them. Inventory isn't in their vocabulary. What, they have like 20 games for sale and the prices are all god-awful? The 20 games they have for sale may even be in terrible condition, and the 20 games for sale are all Nigel Mansell. I mean, I'm happy I own this. I don't need to be happy 20 more times. But if you dig deep enough, you're sure to find a retro game store that has a perfect balance of quality, quantity, and decent prices. But for some people, that's just not good enough. They won't settle for decent prices. They want people to pay them to buy a game. Well, the only way you're gonna potentially experience that are flea markets and garage sales, synonyms for disappointment. I have gone to so many flea markets and garage sales because you hear these stories of literally buying lots of 50 of the rarest SNES games for a quarter. So many people find amazing things there. Oh, I found a PS3 for $5. I found a Sega 32X for free. I found my wife. But whenever I go to these, it's not only totally up in the air if video games are even going to be available, but if they're worth my time at all. Who knows? Probably not. I went to a garage sale where this 12-year-old kid was selling Wally on Wii for $20. That was the best deal I've ever seen at a garage sale. Of course, you need to do some serious research and planning to walk away from one of these with a good haul. When researching garage sales, you can see if they specifically mention video games in their descriptions. And flea markets, you just have to show up incredibly early because there's a good chance if you show up later in the day, if there were good games there, they were already bought by the scalpers. People who buy as many games as they can, not because they want them, because they want to resell them for above market value. I would say these people are the scum of the earth, but really, I've taken history classes. There were some bad people out there. Scalpers are probably okay people, but they make things kind of gross for people who want things. I'm not looking at the guy selling all these consoles saying, oh, he probably accidentally got a lot of doubles for Christmas. That's why, if you desperately want something, you have to wake up early and sometimes call in some favors. That's a thing you have to get used to as a collector. Asking people about video games, or if they have video games they don't want anymore. Back in the day, I was petrified at the thought of telling people I even knew what the word Nintendo was. I didn't want people knowing I was a... Now I'll gladly tell you about Mario and Wario on the Super Famicom, I don't care. It used to be pretty difficult for me to express myself about my interests back then. I had this feeling that people would look down on me for knowing so much about video games. I don't want to look like a loser in high school. I'll wear Nike socks and use Axe body spray, damn it, I'm cool, I swear! Now who the hell cares, it doesn't matter, look at me, do I look like I don't do this? Now you can avoid all this human interaction by just heading on over to eBay or other online sites. The great thing here is that whatever you want, you can just look up and boom, there's all of them being sold. No trying to find it in the wild, no asking cashiers if they have any copies of Rocket Knight Adventures and they respond to you, wow, aren't you a little young to care about such old games? To that I say, how little do you think of me? I know what I'm about.
Yeah, you don't have to go through that.
All you have to do is give your keyboard an aneurysm, find exactly what you want, either bid on it or buy it now. It's tolerable, but I'm not alone with this one. I still prefer buying stuff at a store. I know, it's wild. I thought online shopping was the way of the future, but buying games at a store makes it less likely things are gonna get broken during shipment or not look the same as their pictures or something. It's way easier to get scammed online, but some stores may sell things for higher prices. But in a lot of cases, I find the extra money I'd spend at a brick and mortar store would be worth it considering I can see the game in front of me, I can physically hold it. The store may even let me test the game out to know 100% if it works. eBay, you may get a deal, you may not, and I think that's the core thing stopping many from getting into collecting. The money. Some people just don't have Glover bucks, and that's perfectly respectable. See, I got into collecting when all I had going on was high school and a minimum wage job. You ever just go to high school, go home, and have nothing better to do? Yeah, that's high school. I didn't have much to spend my money on other than video games, so a good bulk of this stuff was built up during that time. but I still preferred going for a good handful of the cheaper games I wanted rather than blowing my entire paycheck on one sort of expensive one. While it's no doubt cooler to have a rare and expensive title in your collection, I find it's important to see value in the valueless. Hey, my collection wouldn't be complete without personal trainer walking. Want to know how much I paid for it? You know, it's rude to ask people what their salary is. But while I find joy in the things I collect regardless of the value, that's another thing that really depends on the type of person you are and the type of games you want to collect. You may want to go for the cheapest games possible or only splurge on a few select costly ones. But what dictates the prices of these games is the demand. I took intro to business in high school. Demand is what primarily drives the pricing of the game collecting market. If a lot of people want something that is in more limited supply, the price is going to reflect that. The demand and pricing for games and consoles vary all the time, and you can mostly draw conclusions as to why certain things are expensive and why others are a plague. You may think the older and rarer games are the more pricey ones. See, that's the funny thing, no. Take a look at the consoles prior to the NES. Sure, of course there are some expensive titles, and finding working systems will cost you a pretty penny just to play this, but Atari and Television, ColecoVision, these aren't in nearly as high demand as the other games. Most of the people who grew up with these things already got nostalgic over them and rebought them years ago. The collectors who collect these things already did. There's not a lot of people becoming strictly Intellivision collectors nowadays. And considering most of the titles here don't hold up very well and aren't a part of major franchises still getting games to this very day, these games aren't skyrocketing in value anytime soon. When we move on to the NES, SNES, Sega Master System, Genesis, Game Boy, this is where collecting gets a bit more competitive. Demand for these games are far higher because they're Nintendo and Sega. They still make games, particularly Nintendo. These games are always relevant because Nintendo's always relevant, and many of the most beloved and revered game series of all time got their start on these consoles or in this era in general. Because of that, these games do hold their value. However, people who grew up with these systems primarily got the nostalgia bug for them around 2010 or so, and thus prices haven't really come down on them, but they aren't necessarily shooting up. But then we move on to Nintendo 64, PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, GameCube, PlayStation 2. These prices keep going up. And in my opinion, that's because the people who grew up with these consoles are getting to the age where they're feeling nostalgic over them. They want to experience these games again. Couple that with the fact that these games don't get re-released on newer consoles all too much, and the only true way to play a lot of these is by tracking down original copies, and we have ourselves a reason as to why Mario Party 6 costs the same as a brand new video game. And then there's the original Xbox, the joke of the collecting world. This is literally one of the cheapest quality libraries to collect for. Original Xbox stuff is dirt cheap. For some reason, not many people want this stuff. I notice many collectors get peeved when others bring light to unappreciated games, and because of that, their value skyrockets. And I never understood that mentality. Now sure, you'd have to pay more for the game now, but that shows there's money in the retro game market. Because of that, more stores can open up. You have more members of the collecting community now. You just have to pay $10 more to own a game. Suck it up. Understanding the general value of games, what certain games should be priced at, all that is integral to not getting treated like a fucking idiot by the seller. I'd recommend going to price charting websites to see the going average value of certain titles, as well as just going out there to stores to get a whiff of what prices generally are. But we're talking used games here. You could be one of those creeps who never opens any of their games. That brings us to the condition of the games you want to collect.
Yes, I personally don't want to get to the point where I know the difference between plastic seals on video games, but if we're gonna go through the basics, we have to know this is how you get on a list.
So some people only collect sealed video games. They don't open them. I mean, sure, I'm not one to criticize your own stupid fucking hobby, but why? I mean, having a couple sealed games, sure. I own a few, but the only reason why I don't open them is when I don't really have a reason to. Like, I own Breath of the Wild on Nintendo Switch. I wanted the Wii U version because it's a neat little collectible thing, but I can already play the game. Why would I need to open this? Or if I own the digital release of a game and end up buying a physical copy, sometimes I just don't open it. I've gotten more open happy as the years have gone by, and my stance is, I have no intentions on selling this in the future. Why not open it? But people who never open any of their games, I don't get them. There are these organizations that grade the quality of your video games and how well they're sealed and all that. I will never submit anything to them. I don't need confirmation I'm a fucking loser. I don't need to be reaffirmed how much I didn't open my copy of Luigi U. On the exact opposite side of that, people who collect games and store them like this. What's the goal here? What's the point of collecting games if you're not gonna take good care of them or flaunt them in a respectable manner? I hate storing games like this. It's a pain to pull a game out and pop it back in its place. Some people don't mind owning the disc without the cases. Yeah, sure, I don't mind living without breathing. Might as well make a sandwich with these things if you're that opposed to taking care of them. Like I said, it's up to the collector what they warrant as acceptable in their collection. And me personally, I don't mind if the instruction manual is missing or something, but if the game originally came in a plastic case, not a cardboard box or something, it needs to be in the plastic case. It needs to have the original artwork. I have nightmares about the fact this is what my copy of GTA 2 looks like.
And really, that brings us to the problems associated with video game collecting. Really, the fact that I'm so frugal about how my video games look on a shelf, I'm shocked I made it this far in life.
I love collecting and having this giant wall of garbage, but I kind of miss the simplicity of the smaller game collections. Yeah, you don't have as many games to play, but those games were your games. You have a bit of an attachment to the small library you own. Even if you have a few duds, you still played them for all they were worth. Now it's like, yeah, I own Brutal Paws of Fury. I'm not the man I want to be. So much space is taken up by these things. And sometimes I look outside and see all the kids playing with their Xbox Ones where all the games are digitally stored on the hard drive. And owning digital games used to be an absolutely disgusting thought. No way I want the box, the case, the artwork. But as the years go on, it's more and more appealing. It's nice to have everything you want on one console. You don't need to go rummaging around for the disc. Sure, there are tons of negatives with digital content, but many times, I'll gladly take convenience over the principle of owning the physical game. I used to want to own a physical version of every game I'd play. Now, while I like that, it's not as big of a deal to me. I'm kind of like, yeah, if I want to pick it up someday, the physical copy will always be floating around on eBay. I'm in no rush. And that's a thought I've had a lot lately. Yeah, I do have this feeling of preservation when I'm collecting these games. But who am I kidding? I don't think there's any one-of-a-kind items in my collection. Anything that gets released, I don't need it right now. When I officially really want something, I can always find it on eBay most of the time, no problem. The price may be lower, the price may be higher. If it's higher, well, that's my fault, but eventually I'll find it at a decent price. And that's the case with most games I kinda want, not really want. I don't really care about many one-of-a-kind items. Couple that with the memories of a smaller game collection, and I honestly wouldn't mind selling all of my games just to start collecting all over again from square one. Don't take that as I don't feel any connection to these games. I don't care about these things anymore or anything. It's just those first few years of collecting were so much fun. They were exciting. It was great picking up games I always wanted for the first time ever. And considering all the games I own can just be rebought all over again, I think it may be kind of fun to start all over from scratch. Sure, I'd probably keep a few things like Mario Galaxy. This was my original copy. That would be like me spitting in 10-year-old me's face if I sold it. But collecting was and is such a fun time that I wouldn't mind doing it all over again.
Game collecting's a fun hobby to get into, and I really hope I inspired somebody out there who's lonely to become lonely and in debt. Now I think the only thing left to do is to go through my favorite things in the collection. The Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Special Edition. This is a nice fat little box. I love adjectives in this too. The entirety of my Wii U collection. I have one of the last major releases being Axiom Verge, and some of the more rare games like Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, Wii Sports Club, and of course Hello Kitty Cruisers. Fun fact, this game is bad.
We dare! I never thought I'd own a copy.
The Super Mario All-Stars Collector's Edition on the Wii. I always wanted this ever since it released back in 2010, and it was a joy seeing it go from $70 to $20 after it got re-released. The Wii Sports Nintendo Selects re-release. This is actually really cool because in North America, this is the only way to get Wii Sports in a full official case because it usually got bundled in with consoles in this little sleeve. I remember actually printing off my own Wii Sports case, so to get a full official one is magical. Just Dance 2020 on the Wii and Just Dance 2019 on the Wii U. I love this because this came out on the Wii and not the Wii U, and this was the final Just Dance on the Wii U. This was one of the highlights of living in the year 2019. Chibi Robo on the GameCube. This is one of the pricier titles I own, but it's all worth it because it's Chibi Robo. GameCube demo discs I would play on a kiosk at a Walmart or something. I have always wanted to feel like a Walmart. BioShock Infinite. I just have a lot of fond memories with this one. You know those games that once you're done with all your responsibilities for the day, you just run home to play through a game? That was Infinite for a good few days. BioShock and Oblivion combo pack. I didn't know this existed until I saw it for sale. I had to get it because I've never seen it before. FIFA 13. This game hit it big back in high school. Everybody was playing it. It was a huge deal. I just wanted to feel like I was a part of the craze, so I ended up buying it 3 months ago. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas for the 360. This is such an oddball release. Just the fact that they had to re-release it in the Platinum Hits casing makes me feel like I never want to look at it again, but it's San Andreas, and it's running on the 360 in HD. Just the fact that they re-released this with no indication that it wasn't a new 360 game by saying it's San Andreas HD or something and just acting like this was a 360 game all along is very interesting. Devil May Cry 5th Anniversary Collection. This is literally just a bundle of all the 3 Devil May Crys on the PS2. I just found it interesting that they tried to celebrate the 5th anniversary of something. 5 years is nothing. FIFA 14 on the PS2.
I just like how this exists. Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn. This was my first Sega Saturn game, and it's currently one of 2. This is such a cool, obscure Sonic game. It's a compilation of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, and there's a 3D overworld you can explore, and it compiles all these commercials and artwork. It's amazing. Tetris Attack on the Super Nintendo. Tetris Attack is quite possibly my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. Moving on. Tetris. It's Tetris. You have Tengen Tetris, which is a rare version of Tetris that was an unlicensed NES game. This is a much better version of Tetris than the official Nintendo released one. Mega Man 6, this was one of my first big NES splurges at the time. This was only around 40 bucks, so nothing crazy, but this is honestly one of the coolest Mega Man releases on the original NES. They actually did a lot to mix this one up compared to the first 5 titles, and it was originally published by Nintendo. That's fun. Castlevania Bloodlines, this was another splurgy one, nearing the $100 mark. Not necessarily proud of that, but this was only released on the Genesis. I couldn't buy it anywhere else, and then Konami decided in 2019 to re-release it on every platform. Comic Zone is really fun. 100 classic books for the Nintendo DS. The nerve of Nintendo for taking advantage of public domain books to turn the DS into an e-reader. I have an e-reader. Nintendo 3DS Guide The Louvre. I got really weird on eBay one night and bought this. This was only available at the Louvre gift shop and is a virtual tour of the museum. There's definitely more, especially in the closet, but it doesn't matter because we've reached one of my favorite parts of the collection. The hairdryer box.
Hey all, Scott here, and damn it! I own Sonic Jam! It's a pretty rare game, but I don't want to be known as the guy who owns Sonic Jam when I'm dead.
If you tell somebody you collect video games, you are most definitely going to get the question, what's the rarest game you own? Come back to me on that one. I firmly believe if you want to collect stuff and have fun while doing it, it's best to do it with things you legitimately enjoy and not just collect it because, ooh, it's worth something. I collect the games I want to collect and play eventually. The rarity or value hardly matters to me. However, it is still fairly interesting to know. I mean, I bought Gravity Rush Remastered because I wanted it, but hey, now that it's $70, I guess this is my personality now. But that's beside the point. There aren't infinite copies of all video games available. I know it feels like there's a Connect Adventures every few inches, but I guarantee you there's a finite amount. Some video games are as common as leaves, but then there are the video games that just never sold that well or just never had a ton of copies produced. Now, a game can be rare right from the get-go, but mostly the value increases over time as more and more people realize, oh god, that's a rare game, I want that. But let's lay this out right here. Rare games aren't always valuable, and valuable games aren't always rare. A game's value comes down to how many people want it and how many people are willing to pay a hefty price for it. I can make a house out of all the Mario Party 2s out in the world, but a lot of people really want that game right now, so it costs nearly as much as a new game. But it ain't rare, that's for sure. But then you have whatever the hell this is. A pre-owned copy of Madden 93 for the Sega Genesis, complete with a specific cardboard box for pre-owned games. I guarantee you this is far more rare than Mario Party 2, but you won't see anybody breaking down my door for this.
Maybe.
Technically, any copy of any game can be slightly altered to become the rarest version of that game. See? Here? Look. One of a kind. The only thing that'll make this valuable is if somebody is willing to pay $300 for it.
Everybody's obsessed with the rarest games of all time, owning the rarest games of all time, playing the rarest games of all time. As long as they're worth something. Now I'm only interested in picking up rare games that I want to play really bad, but I'm willing to make an exception for the sake of investing. I want to find the rarest game of all time to help me pay off some fun debt.
Well, what do I constitute as a rare game? Well, something that's uncommon, of course. I think the only rare games that get attention are the ones that sell for ridiculous amounts of money. You couldn't pay me to pay this much. It doesn't help that a lot of articles go up detailing old vintage things you might have in your attic that might be worth a fortune. Yeah, an original Game Boy is rare. It's like $700. Yeah, okay, no. I mean, all you have to do to feel better about owning something is to search for it on eBay and sort the listing from highest price first. I'll think about it. I remember when a bunch of people thought they totally scored after a bunch of articles appeared online saying the VHS tapes of old Disney movies were selling for That's not the case. That's how much some sellers are asking for these things. Are people buying for that much? I hope not. The value of rare items is only as much as people are willing to spend on them. In my opinion, no game is worth more than the original asking price of it, and even then, Sushi Striker retail for $50, my god. A pretty surefire way to know the true value of a game isn't to go on eBay and say, welp. It's to go on price charting websites. These track how much games sold for over time, so you know the average going price of these things. But if I'm gonna pay top dollar for a game, it may as well be the rarest of all time. But hey, who knows? Let's look through my collection and see if I already own rare games. Well, this is it. These are the elusive games in my collection. I own a lot of heavily desired games that go for a lot of money, but these ain't rare. Like, I own a copy of Shenmue, please like me. I own a copy of Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn.
That's f***ing right.
This is probably the rarest game I have. I mean, I have Gravity Rush Remastered, a few uncommon Wii U titles, Chibi Robo, Retro Game Challenge, Xenoblade Chronicles, nothing that crazy. I have Metal Slug Anthology for the PlayStation 2. This was a fairly uncommon game for that system for a while there. I found it for 60 bucks and I scooped it up. The value now is, oh, son of a bitch. I find the value of games to fluctuate like crazy over time. It generally has to do with what's the big nostalgia craze and what's not easily accessible. For that reason, GameCube is fairly expensive now, while a lot of the value of older consoles around the NES era aren't necessarily shooting up in value. The big nostalgia boom for that thing was around 2010, but now it's Chibi Robo's time to shine. Look at that. But we're not just looking for expensive games, we're looking for something that's one of a kind, the rarest of all games. While we're not really gonna find much in terms of the more modern consoles, the older the system gets, the harder it is to find stuff for it, and thus the rarer and more expensive some games get. Now, we do have a ton of companies that specialize in limited releases for games recently, but they usually produce a few thousand copies of games. That's just not rare enough. Who knows, I mean, these things might skyrocket in value in 10 years, but for now, get out of my face, Night Trap. 5,000 copies, big fucking whoop. I feel like one of the most likely candidates for an intentionally rare game that's going to skyrocket in value is Axiom Verge on Wii U. Only 5,000 copies on a system nobody's heard of. It's like I'm owning a ticking time bomb of profit. There is that game for the PlayStation 4 that I refuse to say because I'll fucking die laughing. This had a similar limited release strategy with only around 1,000 copies produced. However, the company that sold it was run by one guy who ripped off the Limited Run Games logo, sold the game on April Fool's Day on a website that looks like something you should give your credit card to. Many just thought the release was a joke, but it happened. Only around 80 people bought copies, and the 900 or so copies that were left unsold, well, who knows what happened to them. So this takes the reins for the current rarest game of all time. Let me point this away from the door in case anybody walks in. If we go back a generation, games start to get a little more pricey. The PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 don't really have many expensive games outside of collector's editions, but the PlayStation 3 has NBA Elite 11. It was canceled, but some copies were accidentally sold at retailers. Now, how many copies actually exist of this game? If I had to guess, I'd say something in the low triple digits, but who knows. But there we go, we have another candidate for the rarest game of all time. Boom. Nothing on the Wii, DS, or PSP even comes close to this game's rarity, which is why we should go back another generation. Gotcha Force is probably the rarest standard GameCube game, and I guarantee that's the sole reason most people own it. There's also NCAA College Basketball 2K3, nowhere near as rare or expensive as Gotcha Force or Elite 11, but hey, two rare basketball games, you have to admire that. There's Ninja 5-0 for the Game Boy Advance, which is even more expensive than Gotcha Force. The money per square inch is through the roof on this thing. Rule of Rose on the PlayStation 2 and Steel Battalion on Xbox are up there too, but these games all fail the eBay test. If I can go on eBay and find a handful of copies, they aren't rare enough. Now we're starting to get more into the golden age of video game rarities. Information wasn't kept up nearly as well in the past as it is now with video games, so there are a ton more oddities as we go back. Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut on Nintendo 64 is the crowning jewel of that platform, and it's not even good. I'll pay $400! It was a Blockbuster exclusive update to Clay Fighter 63 and a third, and there were around 20,000 copies produced.
Well, I don't give a shit anymore. This is ridiculous. All these rare games have 5,000 plus copies made of them. The only rarer than rare games we've seen so far are The Death of Society and a basketball game. And I've already played a basketball game within the year. I don't want to do it again.
The PlayStation 1 has fairly reasonable prices all around, but none compare to LSD Dream Emulator. Well, no wonder this one's up there. The rarest Game Boy game, definitely Amazing Tater, going for a whopping Game Boy Color had a ton of late system support, even when the Game Boy Advance was alive and well, but easily the rarest of the Game Boy Color games was Shantae, going for a few $100.
It's not rare enough!
That's why we need to go even further back in history, to the NES. This is the golden age of rare games, the era where information wasn't as easily accessible as it is now. Who knew Kid Clown was gonna be 200 eventually? Tell me, who? While on the NES, there are the usual suspects: Bubble Bobble Part 2, Panic Restaurant, Flintstones Surprise at Dinosaur Peak, and the big one, Little Samson. All of these games are quite good later NES titles. Now, good enough to spend over $300 on, that's tricky to answer. These are kind of the big rare games in the NES library most collectors go for. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're rare, but they're not impossible to get. That's the trick with rare and valuable games. I feel like they're more likely to be in demand when they hit that sweet spot. Incredibly hard to find, but very possible to obtain. You can find all of these on eBay quite frequently, so none of these could really be the rarest games of all time. They're just heavily desired and heavily uncommon. That's why they're so expensive. But let's go a step further with rare NES stuff. How about Bubble Bath Babes? Yes, an unlicensed racy NES puzzle game with babes in a bubble bath. How does gameplay of this get past the YouTube censors? Now this is definitely more uncommon than any of these, but there's a good few copies lurking around there of Bubble Bath Babes, so surely there's something more elusive and rare than Bubble Bath Babes. Well, I mean, one of the most well-known rare games is the Nintendo World Championship cartridge. The gray version was used in the competition and given to the finalists, while the gold ones are much more limited and were given away via a contest in Nintendo Power. But the thing is, combined, there's still a bit over 100 of these things lurking out there. We're looking for double digits or less over here. Plus, these were never official retail releases, so should they really count? Stadium Events was officially released via retail, but was taken off the store shelves very quickly after Nintendo bought the rights to it and released it as their own game, World Class Track Meet. About 200 copies of Stadium Events are believed to exist, with only up to 20 potentially still being completed in the box. Now, a lot of rare games are only rare in specific regions of the world. Stadium Events is the most rare here in North America. It's still pretty rare in PAL territories, and in Japan, it's $20. Are you f***ing serious? Stadium Events may be one of the rarest games ever released via retail for the NES, but it's all about the label. It's the same game as World Class Track Meet, so is it really worth getting laid over owning it?
Yes.
However, if we go back to those darn dang competition cartridges, Nintendo hosted the Nintendo Campus Challenge in 1991, and only one official cartridge exists. Well, we found one of the rarest games ever created. However, this was never supposed to be available to the public, so can it really be considered the rarest game ever made if nobody really had a chance to buy it from retail? Well, let's go all the way back to the Atari 2600 to find some rarer gems. Pepsi Invaders is one I always think about, a Space Invaders clone, but you obliterate 5 letters instead. It was made by Coke, and if anything, this game makes me want Pepsi. However, with only 125 cartridges within existence, it's easily one of the rarest 2600 games, but not the rarest. There's only like 13 known copies of Air Raid that exist. But then there's Red Sea Crossing, which was only available via mail order. 100 were apparently produced, but only 2 have been found. But then let's move over to the Sega Genesis. Tetris, I have $20,000, I know what I'm doing tonight. This version of Tetris was never officially released due to Nintendo having the rights to Tetris on consoles at the time, and only 10 copies are known to exist. But again, it wasn't officially released. How about the Super Nintendo competition cartridges? Now, Nintendo hosted 2 Super Nintendo competitions, Campus Challenge 92 and PowerFest 94. Similar situations to the NES competition cartridges. Very rare, not officially available to the public, so why not the Donkey Kong Country and Star Fox competition cartridges? They were edited versions of both games to be played in a competitive environment. They were only available via Blockbuster, and only 2,500 copies were made available. Are you f***ing kidding me? This is child's play. Come on, why talk about these when Air Raid exists?
All right, I think I figured it out. See, these are potentially the rarest games of all time. One of these may just be the rarest game of all time. And after all the research, after all the eBay searches, I've come down to which one would give me the most unique game collection of them all. Which one is, in fact, the rarest game of all time. It's Sonic 2 with a line!
Hey all, Scott here. You may be asking, whoa, are you sick or just sick? I went to the doctor and they said, wow, you look sick, you should go see a doctor. I've been officially diagnosed with... Well, what else is there to do other than consume more humidifier and talk about limited edition game consoles or whatever, while everybody else is playing outside talking about whatever non-sick people talk about.
There's a certain beauty to, yeah, just bang some Zelda shit on and we gotta get rid of these things. To really spice up your relationship with a console, limited editions may just do the trick. Variants on systems and a specific color with special art, sometimes in commemoration of an event produced in limited quantities. You can pick them up at the stores or maybe just win them in a giveaway. The whole concept of these things took a while to truly catch on. Most Atari 2600 owners back in the 70s didn't know what limited edition or console meant. These things truly caught on when the 90s swung around. It was obvious then that video games were becoming a large fandom with people looking into collecting them. Limited editions either appealed to people who needed just one more Nintendo 64 and could stop whenever they wanted to, or people who needed a reason to finally pick up a system for the first time. And then the 2000s happened, and they wouldn't stopping. What one man needs this many 3DS? I personally really only pick up limited edition systems when I already don't own said system. Like when Smash for 3DS came out, these slick 3DS XL systems barged in, and while I really liked how these looked, I already had a 3DS XL. Now with console upgrades, that's a different story. I didn't have a new 3DS XL, so when I saw the SNES edition on Amazon, let's just say I stimulated the hell out of the economy that day. In general, I'd say I like things pretty vanilla with how I prefer my game consoles to look. I like them to look exactly how it was always intended, how all the promotional images are. I have a black PS4 Pro and I'm proud of it, damn it. However, I must admit, it's pretty fun to get wacky sometimes with limited variants. They're always fun to gawk at, even when the term limited edition is used all the time with systems that are anything but. Ah yeah, limited edition Platinum GameCube, yeah I bathe in these things, they really weren't limited.
Now I got a lot of the initial info on these limited edition consoles from consolevariations.com, and I highly recommend giving them a look-sees if you're into this sort of thing.
Now back when limited editions started out in the early 90s, they were definitely pretty different compared to how they are today. They weren't bombastic, well-designed variants featuring iconic characters or something, they just used to be Toyota. Looking back at the majority of the Game Boy limited releases, many just had logos plastered on them, one of my favorites being the Cat Edition. Now there were specific game-themed editions. This Wario version was given out as a prize during some game show in the UK. Weirdly enough, all it says is limited edition on the box, but when you take it out, it's literally just a black Game Boy with Wario on it. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. A good chunk of the limited Game Boys were just that, prize giveaways, like the Ford one, V-Drink one, this Pink Heart one. There was the Play It Loud series, but that was primarily just different colored Game Boys, with some being rarer than others. Manchester, Milka, Planet Hollywood, EB Games, some silver one. The Game Boy had a ton of crazy limited models, but barely any are legitimately interesting. Most just have a logo of some company on them and that's it. You see, that's one thing the Game Boy and the Atari Lynx have in common. The only limited edition of the Lynx was exactly this, but I prefer it to all the Game Boy editions because this one is the Marlboro edition. You ever ask anybody how they got hooked on cigarettes?
Yeah, the Lynx.
The Game Boy Pocket was an improvement compared to the original in the limited release department. We got some of the same simple logo on the front, but we also got this marble design only in Japan, a gold edition, this Japanese atomic purple one that looks exactly like the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Light. Well, this is already more interesting than the original. A Pokemon Center Store exclusive, which consistently happened with future Nintendo handhelds. Astro Boy, Jesus f***. The Nintendo 64 definitely took some cues from the handhelds and did a ton of limited editions. There was the Fantastic series that was more or less the 64's equivalent to the Play It Loud series on the Game Boy. But this time with translucent plastic. Yeah, the N64 has no shame, it had nothing to hide, and while the Fantastic series wasn't necessarily always advertised as limited edition, some definitely became some of the rarest Nintendo 64 systems you can buy today. The gold version was a Toys R Us exclusive. I always thought this was a cool one. Most gold Nintendo systems feel the need to plaster the Zelda logo on them, and while that's fine, they're definitely some of my favorite limited variants. I think just pure gold can look awesome, and this N64 is no exception. Yeah, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer Limited Edition! It's just a regular N64, isn't it? At least just needs a picture or something on the console to make the customer feel better, God. The Pokemon craze was hitting the big time during the Nintendo 64 era, so Nintendo acted upon that not by making a full Pokemon game for the N64, but just by jamming some Pokemon stickers on the system and calling it a day. Alright, let's be fair, the Pikachu editions of the N64 are crazy unique. They went above and beyond most other limited editions, which were simply just different colors with new designs on them. This one used a new funky looking mold that was longer to compensate for a giant Pikachu on the top. How resourceful. His cheeks light up when the system's on, the power button's a Pokeball, the reset button's his foot. I wouldn't have it any other way. This blue one was for all the world to have, but the orange one was exclusive to Japan. Of course, if you're not into fun at all, you could have gotten the European Pokemon Stadium version instead. I can't even be bothered to yawn. Game Boy Color. Now this was really where Nintendo realized, well, we like this. I can't tell you how many mornings I woke up thinking Delca Game Boy Color.
It was a shoe brand in Austria, and it was won in a contest. That's fun.
More Pokemon editions this time around, that's for sure. There were the Just Go editions with Mario on them. The Lunchables edition is the last thing I think of when I hear Lunchables. Gartner, the GameCube. Did somebody order multiple MTV designs? Giveaway prizes from Europe. Really the only way I can imagine playing Resident Evil 4. Yeah, these beat out the Resident Evil 4 edition. A few GameCubes went with just a simple replacement of the jewel in the middle here. Tales of Symphonia, Metroid Prime, Metal Gear Solid, Twin Snakes, Pokemon XD. However, I'd take the Pikmin 2 bundle any day. It comes with a free Pikmin. F any other object on store shelves. But come on, the full-blown custom variations of the GameCube are where it's at. This Hanshin Tigers edition, Gundam Char, this one for Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which is different from other white GameCubes, but looks almost identical. That's pretty annoying. You save up to get a Crystal Chronicles GameCube only to have people assume it's a much more common white GameCube. But the one I think is the coolest to own would be the Thank You ATI edition, a version given to the people working at ATI for their help on developing the system. Game Boy Advance. Yeah, we're only gonna be able to do some highlights here. The NES edition of the GBA-SP, it was awesome because they put so much love and attention into this one. Even the texture of the design was similar to the original NES controller, that's great. The Game Boy Micro had a similar NES throwback, this time for its Japanese equivalent, the Famicom. Weirdly enough, they released this in North America in addition to Japan. It's meant to look like the Famicom's Player 1 controller, and God, this thing is beautiful. My only problem with it is that I'm worried I'm gonna get it all scratched up if I'm not careful. Now in Japan, there was a Famicom variant of the GBA-SP as well, alongside a Mother 3 Game Boy Micro exclusive to the territory. Again, absolutely gorgeous. But hey, we got the Disney Channel edition over here, so it's okay. The Dual Onyx edition of the GBA-SP always weirded me out. Like, yeah, it looks cool, but it more so looks like a fan mod, something you get by unscrewing two differently colored GBAs and jamming them together. Nowadays, it's absolutely ridiculous to have a Nintendo handheld without a Zelda edition released at some point, and the GBA obviously had this beaut. The Rockstar Games themed one was a European exclusive, I love it, but not as much as the Tribal Tattoo variant. This is the only way to tell people not to fuck with you. There was a real 24 karat gold version of the SP made for a contest, but this advertisement, to my knowledge, is the only time it's ever been seen. Nobody's claimed to officially have this thing for realsies. The contest may have never ended up happening, or the people who won just never cared to show it off to the world, who knows. The Golden Sun edition from Korokoro magazine, even more Pokemon editions, and a bunch with retailer names plastered on the consoles themselves. The Game Boy Advance was a titan in the limited edition industry. Okay, I'll say this now, this is the beginning of a bit much. But it's fine, I'll always take time out of my day to talk about the 50-cent DS, not to be overshadowed by the Hot Summer Donkey release. So many systems released to coincide with games, anniversaries, events, the Seattle Mariners, a baseball team Nintendo used to own. Even more effing Pokemon. Who looked at the Love Plus Plus model and said, yeah, it looks like I'm finally gonna buy a DS. But things get even crazier with the 3DS. With Nintendo selling so many concurrent models, they did multiple limited variations of each, which was probably a nightmare for 3DS system collectors. The original release, no problem, not much going on here. You got this slick Zelda one that came with Ocarina of Time 3D, these versions only released via Club Nintendo, a handful of others, whatever. The 3DS XL gave light to an even slicker Zelda model. This thing was one of the limited edition consoles I always looked at with envy. It's so well themed around A Link Between Worlds. Hyrule is represented by the dark upside down Triforce on the bottom. I love this design. And like I said, the Smash Brothers one was cool too. In Japan, they actually got a new 3DS XL version of it, which I actually think looks a bit better. The Animal Crossing New Leaf model looked like a Pop-Tart. Pikachu has nipples. Year of Luigi, Mario and Luigi Dream Team, Pokemon, Mario, Tomodachi, Pokemon, Mario, Pokemon, Mario, Pokemon, Magic Castle, Mario. The NES edition is stupid. The GBA-SP has the outside mimic the console and the inside mimic the controller, just how it should be. The 3DS XL version just spanked a picture of the NES controller on the outer shell, and the inside, well, wouldn't you know, it has red buttons. Lame. Now, the new 3DS featured interchangeable faceplates, meaning those were kind of the replacement for limited editions. Of course, the Game Boy Micro also had interchangeable faceplates, but that didn't stop them. There was the Ambassador Edition, sold to Club Nintendo members in Europe way before the official release date, and this thing looks so cool. But the new 3DS XL definitely had more limited versions, a few Zelda editions, one Majora's Mask and the other just with the Triforce. Not a big fan of either of these. When I think Majora, I think purple. What the hell is this? Metroid, Monster Hunter, oh man, what else? How about Pokemon? Not as many editions as the original 3DS XL, but some cool designs here, that's for sure. I do like the SNES edition mainly because it didn't have the glossy coating on the outside like most other new 3DS XLs have. How about the 2DS? There were these cool Pokemon ones, shocker. They were translucent and made to commemorate Pokemon's 20th anniversary, even coming in boxes reminiscent of the old school Pokemon Game Boy games. This Zelda one looks tart to me, and hey, what do you know? I have the Super Mario Maker edition. This is hideous. The new 2DS XL limited editions did a lot of extra stuff on the outer shell. Minecraft, a Hylian shield, Dragon Quest, a Pokeball, Pikachu, all these had special 3D designs that weren't just simple splashes of artwork, and that was really cool. Now with the Nintendo home consoles, there really aren't nearly as many editions as their handhelds. The Wii had a one-of-a-kind gold-plated version given as a gift to Buckingham Palace. I've been scouring the Ohio Craigslist for this thing, I will find it one day. There was a red Wii released for Mario's 25th anniversary, and who could forget the Glee Wii? The Wii U didn't have much. Literally, the only Wii U released outside of the standard black and white consoles was the Wind Waker edition. It pairs nicely with the original Zelda 3DS, but the gamepad was the only special part about this package. The Wii U console itself wasn't any different. One cool thing about the various Wii U bundles though is that they all have unique artwork on the boxes, giving a cool spin on the U logo. They're all super neat. I'd love to see a full collection of these boxes someday. Since the Nintendo Switch is a handheld and a console, you can bet Nintendo has been more willing to spit out new limited editions. Diablo, Monster Hunter Double Cross, Pokemon Smash Brothers, but easily the coolest one is the Nintendo Labo edition. All the other ones kinda generally follow the same idea, just a white tracing of an image on the back of the Switch or the dock. The Labo release gives everything the essence of cardboard. It's great. Sadly, it is pretty limited though. These were for winners of a Labo-themed contest. Well, those are all the limited edition consoles, damn it. Sega had a few, primarily with the Game Gear and Dreamcast. The Game Gear's limited editions weren't crazy. A few different colors, Coca-Cola, you know, typical stuff. But the Dreamcast had the Sega Sports Black version. How did this thing fail? Look at this Hello Kitty one. We have X-ray vision. This Platinum model is sleek. There was this Bang & Sonic Anniversary one, the Maziora edition, I like just for the box alone. Look at this guy. And you couldn't have special edition Dreamcast without a Seaman release. Even a special Christmas variant came out too. If only it had a Coca-Cola version. Oh, PlayStation time. We got a console in commemoration of 10 million PS1s sold, consoles in commemoration of 20 million PS2s, consoles in commemoration of Monsters Inc. Scare Island. Sony really liked to do the whole commemoration of a certain number of units sold thing. And they did this a lot more, even recently with the PS4. But man, this gold edition is great. There's a few standouts, but overall the PlayStation brand didn't get super wild with limited editions. Most were just different colors or simply released alongside a game. The PS4 has been having a lot though. Who else better to give away a gold PS4 than Taco Bell? Batman, Dragon Quest, Call of Duty, Spider-Man, Kingdom Hearts, God of War, this amazing throwback to the PS1, so many editions. But just like Nintendo, Sony went berserk with their handhelds, especially the PSP. Tons coincided with games, but only one was a Hannah Montana edition. I love the God of War Ghosts of Sparta one. Black and red is one of my favorite color combinations. There was another God of War release, but I like the other one a bit more. This one's great too though. The PS Vita honestly couldn't compete. Most designs are kinda boring here. It's all about the color with this handheld and not much else. I kinda like the Persona 4 Dancing All Night edition, but other than that, nothing really sticks out. Xbox, you ever considered just taking it easy? The original Xbox has some of the most iconic limited releases. The Mountain Dew version is one I always think of. Getting it seemed like a bit of a hassle though. You had to drink a lot of Mountain Dew just to have a shot at winning it. It wasn't guaranteed. And hey, if you don't like Mountain Dew, there's always the Hulk. An Xbox for the launch team at Microsoft, the Panzer Dragoon Orta one, my god. Halo Special Edition is a super well-known one, and the Atari Xbox makes me want to crack out a thesaurus to see all the synonyms for the word wrong. The Xbox 360 had the Simpsons Movie Edition that was crazy limited. Taco Bell back again with another release. The Star Wars Edition looked fantastic, and I'm not even a big Star Wars guy. There were so many 360s released. Many came out alongside big games. The Xbox One kinda continued the trend, but not nearly as much. While there are a ton of pretty good looking ones, Microsoft has mainly been focusing on controller variants this generation. But hey, I'm not complaining too much. Microsoft can make a mean looking controller.
Great talk, guys. Limited edition systems are fun to gawk at, but you know what else is fun to gawk at? This official statement from my doctor. Let's see what this illness is officially doing to me. Oh no. If I don't do anything about this mild congestion, I'm gonna die in 60 to 70 years!
Hey y'all, Scott here. I bought new clothes. That's why they always call me New Clothes Scott. I love designs like this so much. I should go as far as possible with that love.
What kind of tattoo you want? Plaid.
Could've just gotten the Xbox controller.
It's a brand new day. I wake up and what do? I buy more useless trash. If I run out of money, I'll just sell another kidney. I don't care. Look, I bought another rice cooker for the collection. That's a core problem when it comes to your everyday video game player. We end up buying a lot of stuff we don't really need? I mean, sure, I don't need Rhythm Heaven Fever, damn it, I need two. They're obviously products we all want, but don't really need. However, buying new video games brings us entertaining experiences we wouldn't have had otherwise. But we all have those things we really don't need, but sort of kind of want anyways, and game companies know this. That's why they all say, grab the paint, Scott's a moron.
I'm not as ashamed as I want it to be.
These special editions, products that have a special little paint job that makes you squirm at the thought of not owning it. Even if you have the standard edition of a game console already and it works perfectly fine, you even think it already looks nice and sleek and all that, just when a glacier white PlayStation 4 gets announced, yeah, alright, where do I sign? Special edition game systems have somewhat puzzled me because in many cases, these special editions appeal to hardcore fans who already own the console, so to have them buy a completely new one just for a different paint job, it's a lot to go through. Which is why I think special edition controllers are where it's at. The controllers are the kind of things you usually buy multiples of for your system, so hey, why not pick up the special ones? You can never have enough of this. But here's the thing, controllers are absolutely abused. These things are put through so much, and if you play games, you know you're prone to some thumb grease. To buy a controller based on its looks alone, and with it only being available for a limited time, I almost don't want to use it. I know if I do, it's more susceptible to wear and tear, and if it breaks down, I don't want to buy another one. By the time I have to do that, it's going to be 10 times more expensive online. Have you seen the Cheeto market? People pay top dollar for special trash. Imagine how much I have to pay for a new Halo Reach controller. Who chews on thumbsticks?
Special edition controllers. They're always a joy to see, plus you can usually warn picking these up because you can never have too many controllers. However, I never want anything to ever happen to these. They're too precious. That's why I don't have anybody over anymore.
Yeah, so I kind of have this weird thing where I have to lick every controller that I see. Donkey Kong!
Listen, I'll usually buy something like this when it's either A, related to a game I like, or B, the design makes me swoon. I own a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 controller and have no interest in the game. I feel like I'm on a list somewhere. But sometimes special edition controllers are more trouble than they're worth. Again, that's why nobody's invited over here anymore. You have the one guy that notoriously doesn't bathe his fingers go, yeah, I'll take the gold one. Like, what the f? Don't do that to my controller!
But to truly appreciate special edition controllers now, we have to go back to when companies said, do it yourself.
People have been customizing their controllers ever since the dawn of time, and if you want to reach a bit, we could consider decals to be the first instance of the special edition. I think a lot of people have seen these Nintendo Power decals for NES controllers. You'd get them with the magazine and just stick them onto your gamepad. These things have always been a thing, still prevalent nowadays. These are the cheapest possible solution to give your controller some flair. The only one I technically have is the controller skin that came with the Sonic Forces bonus edition. Joking hazard?
Thank God I read that.
But nobody likes talking sticky paper. Everybody wants to talk about controllers that come with paper pre-sticked. Special edition controllers really hit it big during the Nintendo 64 days, and not only were there multiple colors to choose from, but some fancy designs that were definitely harder to come by. Some of these were given away via promotions or sweepstakes or specific catalogs within magazines like the Millennium 2000 controller or the Nintendo Power 100th issue gold one. However, one I own happens to be the Donkey Kong 64 controller. It was a special order item through Nintendo Power, not all too different compared to the standard yellow, but it's hauling the tips with this one. They're bananas. This design makes me way more okay with the standard controller layout. So that's what these things were supposed to be. Many look towards the golden controllers for their daily dose of dopamine. Nothing screams special edition more than crippling debt. So of course there was a gold Nintendo 64 controller, but there was an even golder asterisk controller that is way past rarer. These ones were given away at a Star Fox 64 tournament at Nintendo's E3 1997 booth and are pretty similar to the standard gold you could get in stores. However, this one had a fancy Nintendo 64 logo on the front. I'd consider the Nintendo 64 to be where special controller variants were truly born. Sure, there were constant revisions of the Sega Genesis controller, for example, but those primarily boiled down to red buttons, black buttons. With the N64 offering 4 controller ports, that obviously meant more controllers were to be sold, so why not sweeten the deal a bit with some designs only a mother could love? These weren't revisions, rather they were for fans of the console and games. But at this time in gaming, special edition consoles were way more prevalent than just controllers. You were lucky if the controller included in the box got any love at all. The PS1 and Sega Saturn dabbled in this here and there, but we really had to take one giant leap of faith into the following generation where we can truly start to see some more special controllers make their debut. The Sega Dreamcast took some notes from the Nintendo 64. See, we have 4 controller ports, you know what that means. It's f***ing blue! But the GameCube was where it's at for special variants. I'd say it definitely wasn't on par with the N64, but we have some interesting ones here. One I happen to have is a controller you can only purchase via Club Nintendo Japan, the Luigi controller. Oh god, I can't wait to see what it's like. Who could have thought? Club Nintendo was home to some of the more sought-after special editions for the console. We have a Mario, Wario, and standard Club Nintendo design, with the Mario design also being offered by Club Nintendo Europe. I honestly think the most interesting thing about these are the boxes. Not only do I like the official name being Luigi Controller, but they made sure to include denim. I know what you're thinking. I love the GameCube. There were a ton of other designs bundled with limited edition consoles, but what about controllers with special functions? Like, see, I enjoy this, but I just want more. I think I found another choking hazard. The keyboard controller is the white whale of my video game collecting career. I want it, but right around the time I discovered it, it was pricey, no doubt, but definitely obtainable. Now we've officially entered the year 2020, and damn it, there goes my 5th kidney. This was only available in Japan and only for Phantasy Star Online, so you could communicate with other players quickly. Yes, this may have no use to me, but come on, who wouldn't want this? Scribes? Maybe Scribes. Of course, if we're talking limited special controllers during this era, there was of course the Resident Evil 4 controller. Oh, that's nice. What the f***? This is no doubt one of the most notoriously bizarre controllers ever created, a chainsaw. Now, of course, one of the iconic enemies in RE4 was the Chainsaw Man. Considering that he uses a chainsaw and you don't, I don't see how immersive this controller really is, but bonus points where bonus points are due, it truly feels like I'm playing a game with a chainsaw. This was also released for the PlayStation 2 and is definitely more of a product of Capcom's than Nintendo's or Sony's. Which that does bring up how third-party companies can definitely put out their own wacky editions, usually in cooperation with companies that specialize in this kind of trash. The Shadow the Hedgehog PS2 controller, yeah, lines at the store for that one. Sony was never the biggest into custom designs, and normally they'll just do new colors, and maybe some special ones here and there, but this is one area where the Redmonders reign supreme. Of all these options, did you really think the publisher of Fusion Frenzy would put out the most controller variants? Now, the original Xbox, they were pretty humble. Here and there we got a few, especially with special edition systems, no biggie. But then, The Xbox 360 came around. Is this a fucking joke? A lot of these are relatively inexpensive, considering I feel that collectors of Xbox stuff are way more endangered comparative to Nintendo and PlayStation collectors. Darwinism is hilarious. But that never stopped Microsoft from putting out just a ton of special edition controllers, many of which were just that, controllers. You could buy them separately from a console bundle or something. Here I have a Halo Reach controller and a Gears of War 3 controller. I do like the overall look of both of them. I think the Gears one has a better overall design, but I love the minimalistic take on Reach's variant. But I bought these for like 10 bucks a pop online. I got this one back in the 360's heyday with my own 14-year-old money. I like this one. It's been my go-to 360 controller ever since. The material used feels really premium, and the overall design being completely grayscale is sleek as all hell. The only problem is some games may tell you hit the yellow button, and now you know my colorblind hell. Weirdly enough, Sony and Nintendo barely dived into the special controller market this generation. The Wii was basically just white for most of its life, and then by the time people stopped caring, that's when they added new colors, but none of these were particularly limited or special. I think the core special Wii remote most jumped to is the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword Edition. Gold with Zelda insignia. It's a fine-looking controller, no doubt, but as one of the only special Wii remotes, But speaking of gold controllers, only available via special editions of GoldenEye 007 was a Golden Classic Controller Pro. I love this thing. It's just gold, and I found it used at a GameStop back in the day. Again, I will reiterate, I love this thing. Now Sony, they had more specific game-based designs than Nintendo, but at least the Wii Remote was a completely new design. You didn't necessarily have to spice it up with fun colors and shapes. The PlayStation 3 controller was derivative of this, which was derivative of this. I can keep going. It just didn't do a ton with this thing outside of mostly colors, but that changed with the PlayStation 4. Look at all these. They really upped their game. We have Uncharted 4, the 20th anniversary of PlayStation, Piss. There are so many options now. Well, it looks like Microsoft finally has some competition on their hands. This is fun hell. They even fixed my biggest problem with that silver controller and have the colors displayed here. It's perfect. They even let you create your own custom controller colors online now. They are fucking loony. But hey, this one's grease-proof, a controller that addresses the biggest gaming hurdle. See, I want to play Halo, but I just love no fork spaghetti. Now what did Nintendo do with the Wii U, the console with the most integral controller experience? Nothing. I mean, there was this Wind Waker one, which was only included in the console bundle. They never sold Wii U gamepad separately. But not even the Wii U Pro controllers got any special releases. All we got was white and black colors, but special Wii remotes and Wii U branded boxes were released, all featuring designs based on the Mario cast. And yep, I have twins. I do feel like these character-specific Wii remotes are a bit more cool than the GameCube ones. Certain colors are used on certain parts to represent the character, like the bottom 1 and 2 buttons are brown for his shoes, the plus and minus buttons are yellow for his overall buttons, the back is colored to his overalls in general. Other controller companies had similar ideas when making their own officially licensed Nintendo controllers. I have this Metal Mario Classic controller by PDP. These were primarily made for Smash Brothers for Wii U. It may not be a great controller, but it's not a good controller either. Design though is really cool, just with how shiny and metallic it looks. It almost but doesn't make up for the lackluster feeling buttons. Hori made their own licensed GameCube-like controllers for Wii remotes during Smash Wii U's Shine Time, which are far better, albeit not as good as the real deal. Which was alright, because Nintendo themselves reissued GameCube controllers for Smash Wii U's release, now with a Smash Ball on front. These are GameCube controllers alright, and Nintendo re-released them again for Smash Ultimate. I don't want to hear anybody argue this design is better than the old one. And that brings us to the Nintendo Switch, where special edition controllers are way more prevalent. Special colored Joy-Cons and Pro controllers are finally getting some love. As previously stated, I have the Xenoblade Edition, I am terrible, but I also have the Smash Brothers one, which looks great. You have the silver Smash Ball and white grips, and I can already see paint chipping off. Do you see my problem with special edition controllers? See, I really do like these controllers. They look great, they look cool, but controllers are meant to be used, and I can't use these controllers without ever feeling guilty. They're too rare and valuable. On the other hand, special edition consoles look cool, but they also make much less sense to buy if you already have the console, though the design will hold up for much longer. So, I've come to the conclusion that I won't buy anything ever.
I'm not doing it.
Hey y'all, Scott here. The only true way to know if you're tough shit if you got a Wii Remote holder for free for buying hundreds of dollars worth of Nintendo games and systems. That's a big f*** you to anybody who doubted me buying a Wii U.
Club Nintendo was one of the only cults I was in that offered 3DS XL charging cradles. They were the best. When you have a brand that's as beloved as Nintendo, you should do something in favor of the fans every now and then before they remember this was the company that sold us Odama. Enter Club Nintendo, a loyalty rewards program for Nintendo fans. You buy games, you get points for them, and you could save up a bunch of points to exchange for some amazing prizes. If you were in Europe or Japan, in North America you could exchange them for notebooks. North America's Club Nintendo was flooded with folders and shoelaces. To be fair, we got some good prizes from time to time over here, but I was always looking outside seeing all the Europeans and Japanese having having the time of their lives redeeming their points to get an actual Mario Kart trophy. Come on. Club Nintendo technically first started exclusively in Europe back in 2002, initially named Nintendo VIP 24/7, but it really wasn't like the Club Nintendo we know of today. It was basically a site for European fans to flock to for exclusive updates on some Nintendo games.
In North America, we had something called My Nintendo beforehand, which let you register your games with a specific code where you could get screensavers and stuff. Sign me up.
Japan was the first country to get the true Club Nintendo in 2003, with Europe officially restructuring and renaming Nintendo VIP into Club Nintendo in 2006, with North America finally getting the rewards program themselves in 2008. So this is how Club Nintendo worked. You buy a new Nintendo first-party title, you crack that sucker open, and you're greeted to an invite. Join the club? Own a bag. You take your unique code of the game, which you would rather die than show anybody else, log on to Club Nintendo, sign into your profile, and enter the code to register your software. You take a little survey about why you bought the game and then receive some virtual coins. Usually the amount was in line with how much the game cost in dollars. So for example, since Wii games would generally retail for $50, you'd usually get 50 coins for them. When you bought a new Nintendo system, oh man, that gave you coins in the triple digits most of the time. That was where the money was. I mean, I deserved that for buying this. If you connected your systems to Club Nintendo through their digital shops, you would automatically get coins for digital purchases. And I also believe some very specific physical third-party software came with Club Nintendo codes, but that happened far from often. After registering the game, there would be a chance to get about 10 extra coins if you took another survey after playing it, giving your thoughts on the product. Now I know there were a lot of people who would just get on a Club Nintendo survey and do the unthinkable. A lot of users didn't care about giving true, wholehearted feedback on games and just wrote gibberish to get through the dozen or so questions these surveys would ask. I personally didn't feel right doing that and actually gave real answers on Club Nintendo. But sometimes I'd get pretty lazy and just write the bare minimum. What did you think about this game? It's pretty good. Why did you buy this game? It's pretty good. Where did you buy this game? It's pretty good. A lot of people gave the surveys flag just because they did take a good couple of minutes to get through. Couple that with the fact that the Club Nintendo website itself was painfully slow, and yeah, I can see why people didn't take these surveys seriously. But who knows, maybe the people writing gibberish and not giving pure feedback was the reason Nintendo said, alright, nobody cares, we can release that. I never really complained too much about the surveys because they gave you coins in return for completing them. Yes, Nintendo gives us something in return for taking time out of our day to talk about a product we care enough to register on abstinence.org. But of course, if people can take advantage of an already free service, they will. To be fair though, you'd get these surveys for any of the eShop games you download, and how much feedback can I really give on Donkey Kong 3? Another way you could fool Nintendo was by buying unused Club Nintendo codes off of eBay or something to get coins for a game you didn't buy. Or you could just walk into GameStop, open up a game, take a picture of the Club Nintendo code, and walk out. 8 years ago, I did that once with Metroid Other M. I don't know what came over me. Now, the coins you accumulated could be used to redeem a wealth of fun rewards they had in stock. I mean, that was the entire point of doing all this. You take the Mario handbags out of the picture, I refuse to buy games. After seeing the Club Nintendo propaganda in so many of the games I bought for a few years, I finally decided enough was enough. See, a lot of people joined fraternities. I joined Club Nintendo in 2011. I liked the fact that I was tardy to the party because that meant I had a lot of games to redeem right off the bat, so I was just swimming in coins at the start. Now, the rewards they had available changed all the time, with certain prizes being available for a limited time and then going away forever, while others were consistently available, only sometimes going out of stock. The Color 3DS XL charging cradles, those went out of stock before Nintendo even thought about making them, but don't worry, you could always buy the Kirby patches. Now, because of the limited stock of prizes and joining later in the site's life, I definitely did miss out on rewards that were only available pre-2011, which really stunk. But after actually looking back at all the physical rewards I got, I'm fairly content with what I chose to redeem. One of the first things I used my sweet coins on was this Wii Remote holder. Yes, I looked at all of this and said, f these, my Wii Remotes need a box. This is just a simple collapsible holder for the controllers. I use this for all kinds of remotes and lighters. I thought it was so adequate at holding, I got the other color, which after saying that, I should have brought that little factoid about myself to the grave. One could argue I didn't need this, but more could argue I didn't need to. Game & Watch Collection for the DS was only available via Club Nintendo, and it was one of the most expensive rewards, 800 coins to redeem this one, but the idea of getting a new physical game exclusive to Club Nintendo was just too cool to pass up. This was the second reward I redeemed after the first Wii Remote holder, and I will maintain it. This is a neat reward, a cute little collection of retro LCD Game & Watch games. But it wasn't the greatest investment back then. I mean, in my opinion, you could use those 800 coins to buy other things, like 2 Wii Remote holders. Game & Watch Collection only includes 3 Game & Watch games. Now, to be fair, these are 3 games that use 2 screens, so they were a perfect fit for a collection on the DS. Nintendo's done Game & Watch collections before the DS, but these featured the original versions of the games, plus modern remakes of them as well. Game & Watch Collections features the least amount of games out of all of these compilations, and it's just the originals, no extra pizzazz. So while it was still a cool reward, it's not the most enjoyable or interesting thing, to be honest. You could have picked up Game & Watch Collection 2, but I never did. I actually traded this into GameStop one day just because I really needed $3. One of my favorite rewards I picked up was this History of Handhelds card set. This was a set of postcards which featured art of Nintendo's major handheld systems with little bullet points included. They cover a good chunk of them, but some aren't included, anything released after 2011, and stuff like the Game Boy Light and Pokemon Mini aren't here, but that shouldn't detract from this being just a high quality set of cards celebrating the history of Nintendo's handhelds. It's legitimately fun to go through. It really makes me want a Nintendo published coffee table book of their entire history. I picked up 2 3DS game card cases, and these actually came with multiple inserts with different art and themes. The Majora's Mask puzzle, I got this because I thought it would come in a nice cardboard box. Beep beep, disappointment coming through. And of course later on, Club Nintendo started to offer digital games. Every month they offered a new slate of releases you could redeem coins for. I picked up Fluidity on WiiWare, Pictobits on DSi, lots of other stuff. And by other stuff, I mean of course I got Grill Off with Ultra Hand, come on, I'm only human. This was a Club Nintendo exclusive downloadable Wii game that was based around the Ultra Hand, one of the most popular toys Nintendo made when they were primarily a toy company. It was 80 coins, which meant pretty much anybody could afford it. Even if you didn't want it, you probably had like 100 coins left on your account, and the only things you could get were either Grill Off with Ultra Hand or an Other M screensaver. And I mean, come on, it's a Club Nintendo exclusive game, just download it. Grill Off was an arcade-style go for the high score type game, but that didn't excuse it from being bad. It wasn't that great, but it was cool as a Club Nintendo exclusive. Now, for every reward I got on Club Nintendo, there were about 10 rewards I either couldn't get because they went out of stock a split second after I saw them, or they were too expensive, and then there were the rewards you couldn't pay me to redeem. 10 coins for screensavers, of course no. Mario and Nintendogs greeting cards, the only way to respond to getting drafted. The folders and notebook combo, pen cases, a handful of the rewards just never appealed to me. I felt like I could get all these types of things at Target for like $5. And honestly, a lot of my time with Club Nintendo was spent not redeeming my coins on stuff like that. I'd wait and wait and wait to spend my coins on much more interesting things. I would check the site once a week or so and say, no. There were a lot of items that came out that I always wanted, yet were too expensive at the time. Game & Watch Ball, a full reproduction unit of the first Game & Watch game ever released. Now this was the kind of thing I wanted from a Club Nintendo prize, something that really wouldn't make much sense at major retailers, something that really only big Nintendo fans would appreciate. So it only made sense to be available via Club Nintendo and made the program way cooler because of it. It's awesome to not only have a Game & Watch Ball unit, but one that was brand new, not used or refurbished. It was 1,200 coins, so I had to choose between this and Game & Watch Collection, and I made the wrong decision initially. A fully featured Game & Watch is way cooler than the DS collection. I ended up just buying this one off eBay. A giant AR card! Remember those AR cards that came with every 3DS? Nintendo kept cost cutting and removed tons of random things from 3DS bundles year after year, but refused to get rid of the AR cards. You can't have a 3DS without the AR cards. They were kinda cute, I guess, but how about the one the size of a large newborn? This was always when I was thinking, yeah, if I have like 200 coins burning a hole in my pocket and there's nothing else I want, I might go for it, but that never happened. I don't believe there were any differences between this and the standard Mario AR card. It was just bigger. Poster sets, t-shirts, original DS game card cases, fans, Wii Remote straps, bags, playing cards, Hanafuda cards, pouches for the DS and 3DS based on Zelda, Animal Crossing, the Club Nintendo logo, plus a Luigi variant as well. There were so many fun little things they made available through this program, but easily the coolest things they offered were the gold and platinum rewards each and every year. If you gained a certain amount of coins over a year, you'd be eligible for either gold or platinum status, allowing you to redeem one exclusive gold or platinum reward for free. In 2009, if you reached gold status, you could redeem a calendar, f***ing woo. But if you reached platinum status, you could choose between a Mario hat or Doc Lewis's Punch-Out, a downloadable Club Nintendo exclusive Wii game. It was just a quick Punch-Out match against Doc Lewis based on Punch-Out Wii. Nothing crazy, you can beat it in like 10 minutes, but an awesome little minigame for Punch-Out fans, and a cool reward. 2010 gold members could redeem a calendar, f***ing woo. Platinum members could get a Mario figurine. This was kind of the most iconic Club Nintendo reward, the one you would always see on the bookshelf of that one guy that was always better than you. 2011, yep, platinum reward was this Mario pin set. Now, I bought this secondhand. It's okay. 2012 was the first year I was able to redeem platinum or gold prizes. I qualified for platinum, so I had the choice between playing cards or a poster set, and I went with the posters. In hindsight, I think I should have gone with the cards. I'm not the biggest poster guy, so not sure why I chose that, but these are incredibly high quality prints. The gold prizes included another calendar, but you could choose from a variety of downloadable games as well, which was a nice option. 2013, Platinum Rewards were a poster set and Majora's Mask soundtrack. You bet I got the soundtrack, still sealed too. This was weird because Club Nintendo offered an Ocarina of Time 3D soundtrack, and they put out this Majora's Mask one before Majora's Mask 3D was announced. Again, the gold rewards were a calendar or different digital games, but then 2014 came around, and the beginning of the end was starting to become evident. No physical rewards for either Platinum or Gold members. Instead, you could choose from a bunch of digital games, with Platinum members being offered beefier games like Game & Wario, which is what I chose. This was pretty disappointing because a lot of the Club Nintendo members, including myself, already had a lot of the games they were offering, so it was kind of like, well, I don't really want Game & Wario, but it's the only one I don't have. Now, the ups and downs of the North American Club Nintendo were almost non-existent in other countries. Europe and Japan seemed to more so use Club Nintendo as a way to reward passionate fans with products that were too specific and niche to be sold at major retailers. I have a few Japanese Club Nintendo rewards I've bought over the years, and they're the sole reason North Americans cry. A Wii Remote style TV remote. This doesn't actually work with the Wii, it's just a Japanese TV remote that uses a Wii Remote shell. That's still awesome. A golden Wii wheel. Comes with packaging and everything. And they would still do packaging for all these products as if they were retail products, like this gold nunchuck. In North America, we got the gold nunchuck on Club Nintendo, but it just came in a plastic bag in the mail. A Super Famicom Classic controller for the Wii. This is a full reproduction of the Super Famicom controller, but it plugs into your Wii remote and you could use it with Virtual Console games. This isn't nearly as special now because you can do this with the SNES Classic Edition controllers, but this was the first time Nintendo did something like this, and the box art is awesome. Specific games were released exclusively via Club Nintendo, like Tingle's Balloon Fight. Yep, that is a Tingle Balloon Fight. Excitebot's Trick Racing was only available via Club Nintendo in Japan. They had all these physical soundtracks for games available, special edition controllers. They had these 3 amazing box sets of all the re-released Famicom minigames on the Game Boy Advance. Club Nintendo in Europe would just straight up offer Nintendo points for you to use on the Wii Shop channel or DSi Shop. You didn't have to wait for a specific game to become a Club Nintendo reward. You could just get a points card and buy what you want. Every time I'd see what was available either in Europe or Japan, I got a little miffed. Not only was the quality of these rewards amazing, but the sheer quantity spit in the face of us Ohioans. We'd usually have like 6 rewards available at all times. They had like 2 dozen. But then in January of 2015, Nintendo announced they would be discontinuing Club Nintendo across all regions in June 2015 in North America and September in Europe and Japan. It almost seemed like a very quick decision to kill off Club Nintendo. They were actually utilizing the program much more extensively leading up to its demise. They were offering a promotion where if you registered Mario Kart 8 within the first 2 months of its release, you could choose one of 4 major Wii U games to download for free. Didn't really make much sense to me because every Wii U owner was already going to buy Mario Kart 8. I think this promotion would have made more sense with a game that wasn't going to be a surefire hit, but hey, I was cool with getting Pikmin 3 for free. They also used it with Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. By registering both 3DS and Wii U versions, you would get a soundtrack CD for free and get Mewtwo as free DLC early before everybody else. They also offered specific Club Nintendo members the demo for Smash 3DS early as well, and I was one of the lucky few. Like, they were actually starting to use Club Nintendo in smart ways, and then a couple months later, they said, we don't need this.
I mean, the writing was sort of on the wall with the lackluster Platinum and Gold rewards in 2014, and the Club Nintendo codes themselves were being printed on the inside of the cover art starting around then. They felt less need to advertise them right in your face when you open the game.
Club Nintendo kind of hosted a fire sale in the last few months and brought back certain rewards just so then members could burn off a lot of the coins they still had. They made Doc Lewis's Punch-Out available again, loads of digital games were available to buy, a couple of new physical rewards, and Flipnote Studio 3D finally released for free outside of Japan via the service in February 2015 as a thank you to members.
And then one final round of Platinum and Gold rewards were given out. Still digital only, but some major titles. I own pretty much everything here though. I think I got Mario Kart 7 and sold the code on eBay.
This was a solid end to the program, and to this day, I refuse to look at what Europe and Japan got in the final months of Club Nintendo out of fear of jealousy. Club Nintendo in North America was obviously severely worse than Europe and Japan, but they didn't have to launch the program over here. It was free, you got some cool products from time to time, and it created some fun memories for me. So really, we couldn't complain that much. Now, My Nintendo, yeah, that's free too, but it's actively worse than the program we got before it. Oh, My Nintendo, the one website I refuse to bookmark to this very day. When Club Nintendo was announced to be closing, Nintendo was quick to say they were planning a succeeding rewards program, and by spring 2016, My Nintendo was set up to a resounding,
Oh god.
My Nintendo was primarily focused on Nintendo's mobile apps. It basically launched alongside their first one, Miitomo. It retained the coins from Club Nintendo, but they were separated via platinum and gold varieties. You would get game-specific coins like Miitomo coins or Super Mario Run coins, which were just platinum coins earned by completing tasks within the mobile games. Then there's the standard platinum coins. You'd get these from doing tasks related to visiting Nintendo websites or signing up for emails and junk. And then there's the gold coins you get from buying digital games. And there are completely different rewards relating to either gold or platinum coins. This is needlessly complicated compared to Club Nintendo. And the rewards we get here? What? We have an overwhelming amount of phone wallpapers and things to print out. I can get these for free with a Google search. 3DS themes, alright, that's fine, and then a bunch of discounts on Wii U and 3DS games. Not the full games, because God forbid Nintendo give away copies of Dr. Mario Miracle Cure. No, you still have to buy it, you just get a 30% discount now. We can't even get games as rewards with the gold coins, the coins we get from buying things. I totally understand not getting free games with the platinum coins, those you earn for free, but with the gold, you just get discounts, and they're not even that great of discounts. The highest I've seen is like 40% off. There were only a few digital titles that were available exclusively through My Nintendo. There was Twilight Princess Picross, that was available from the start of the service, and all you had to do was spend about 1,000 platinum coins, which meant this game was completely free. You just had to sign up for a newsletter here and there, and play a ton of Miitomo. This was obviously a very cheaply made game, but a cool freebie, I'll give them that. They also offered WarioWare Touched as a downloadable 3DS title. It's literally the DS game, but digitally downloadable through the 3DS. Nothing's different between the digital and original physical releases, but this was the only time Nintendo's ever digitally offered a physical DS game on the 3DS, so I got it because of that. But that's really it. They offer Flipnote Studio 3D for people who didn't snag it on Club Nintendo. They offer digital strategy guides. No thank you. Holy shit. Bingo! I keep forgetting My Nintendo exists, but thankfully the gold coins can now be used to receive in-store credit on the Switch's eShop, but they feel stingy with this stuff. Like, you have to buy a ton of games to get just like $5 worth of store credit. I also don't understand how you barely get anything better with the gold coins compared to the platinum coins. These are the coins I had to spend money to get, and yet there are sometimes less rewards I can redeem compared to rewards for platinum coins. And sometimes stuff like the discounts, I just don't understand how Nintendo thinks this motivates customers to spend money on their stuff.
30% off Twilight Princess HD for coins I got for free, compared to 20% off Sushi Striker for coins I paid to get. So much about My Nintendo's existence makes no sense to me. So I get points for playing Nintendo mobile games, and with those points, I can redeem discounts for games on 3DS and Wii U. I get no points for playing Nintendo's console games. With Club Nintendo, it was easy to understand how both the user and Nintendo benefited from it. You buy the games, you give feedback on them, you can get rewards. My Nintendo, you use free-to-play mobile games to then get rewards for outdated Nintendo consoles that aren't really rewards, they're just sort of discounts and PDFs.
At least Club Nintendo gave you a reason to want to visit the site. Whenever I use the My Nintendo site, I just end up asking,
How did I get here? My Nintendo is easily worse than Club Nintendo in almost every way. So much about this program makes absolutely no sense to me. So I play Nintendo mobile games to get a discount on Star Fox Zero. I don't know if there's any My Nintendo supporters out there, and if there are, I don't want to see any of them come up to me and ask, oh, so did Club Nintendo have bingo cards? Well, you got me there.
Hey all, Scott here. I want to try a new thing every day, so today I'm gonna be self-conscious. Do I really have what it takes to be a video game fan? Just to make sure nobody has any doubts that I am, I went to the store, I bought this fucking mug, okay? I like video games, alright?
4 numbers spell out the year of the beast, 2016, when Nintendo had nothing better to do and said, let's make 3 of these. The NES Classic Edition was a miniaturized replica of the Nintendo Entertainment System with 30 built-in titles, a list I refer to as Ice Climber and 29 more games. I assume Nintendo started production of this thing because, like, what else did they have releasing in 2016? Jesus. This was an easy way to bump up the old revenue. It appealed to Nintendo fans, collectors, people interested in trying out the classics, and people who grew up with these games who haven't really played much since. Looking at this graph of the population, the NES Classic Edition appealed to most people with skin. It was cute and functional. And because of this product, I'd argue that retro gaming entered a bit of a resurgence in major retailers. Ever since the NES Classic's release, retro gaming merchandise has been more prevalent than ever. This product showed that there was a big interest in retro games, and thus, wow. So this is the timeline where virginity won.
Modern retro gaming merchandise is nothing new. If you've ever had a wedding catered by Hot Topic, you know they've always been into this kind of garbage. But nowadays, you can easily walk into a Walmart or Target and find all these little knickknacks based on games from yesteryear. And if Walmart or Target isn't your thing, then Cracker Barrel will do. Come on, I'm a gamer, I love Cracker Barrel.
Retro gaming merchandise is everywhere now, so let's take a look at some examples of it all and see if they do the classics justice. Well, we wouldn't be here without the mini console craze. Now, these are kind of their own beast, easily worthy of a discussion by themselves. But let's quickly recap the big ones so far: the NES Classic Edition in 2016 and the SNES Classic Edition in 2017, easily at the top of the food chain. These little guys have fantastic build quality, include games that are pretty much the quintessential lineup for each console, really giving you a good idea as to what these systems could do. Tons of love poured into the packaging and menus. These are great love letters to fans of classic Nintendo. And then guess what happened in 2018? The Rapture. A ton of companies tried their hand at the mini console game, but sorta kinda failed miserably. The C64 Mini, a mini Commodore 64, but they didn't have the rights to call it the Commodore 64 Mini. We're off to a good start. It had this mini keyboard, cool right? It doesn't work and you have to use a digital on-screen keyboard, cool right? Sure, you can plug in a USB keyboard or whatever, but I will never exert that much energy for a product called this. The Neo Geo Mini, a very cheap, tiny arcade cabinet. You can plug this into the TV, but the games look sorta garbage, and for some reason they took the original Neo Geo button layout and changed it. What's the point of a mini console at that point? It's all about nostalgia and bringing you back to the past, yet you're going to switch the buttons around and design an arcade cabinet that doesn't even look like the most iconic looking Neo Geo arcade cabinet? It seems like every year SNK tries putting out a new Neo Geo nostalgia grabber, and I am under the opinion that Neo Geo is cool and has its place in video game history, but I'm tired of people acting like it's bigger than it really is. Before you get mad, remember, I'm the guy who owns Just Dance 2020 on the Wii. Do you really think my opinion matters? But the big mini console release of 2018 was the PlayStation Classic. It was bad. This thing was just crazy rushed and was trying to capitalize on the modern retro gaming craze that the NES Classic started. One of the biggest problems in my opinion is that Nintendo's way better at harnessing the nostalgia for their products. A lot of people who own Nintendo consoles own them for the same reasons and played similar games. The Marios, Zeldas, Pokemons, all that. You put 3 PS1 owners in a room, it is very likely they all played completely different games. I'm not saying nostalgia doesn't exist for the PS1, but the console relied a lot more on third-party games, so when we see the game lineup for the Classic and it's a whole lot of it's pretty obvious why. The lineup was bad, the emulation quality of the games was questionable, the price was $100. I got mine a few months ago for $20, and that was a beautiful price for this thing I never play. Now in 2019, we have the Sega Genesis Mini, which thankfully is toe-to-toe with Nintendo's mini console quality. Over 40 games, and the titles they packed in are super cool. Some licensed Disney games, Konami games. This is an excellent little console. But here's my problem with the mini consoles. I never play them. I am not gonna warrant taking up an entire outlet or an HDMI port just for this little box that plays only 20 games, you know? I'd rather all these games be playable on the modern consoles, and hey, some of them are, but some of them aren't, and that's a little annoying. It's weird. When they're good, I like these things. Hell, even when they aren't great, I still like owning them as mini replicas of the original systems. But as functional pieces of society, I don't know, man. If you gave me the Sega Genesis Mini in its entirety as a downloadable app on the Switch for 60 bucks, yeah, I'd buy it and play it a lot more than the actual Genesis Mini. These things are a complete novelty. I love them, but I do not keep them plugged in. But these mini consoles inspired dozens of companies to jump into the retro gaming scene themselves, and ever since, Walmart has never been the same. I try to buy nicotine gum and go, oh great, fucking Galaga.
I don't smoke, I just like the gum.
Mini arcade cabinets are everywhere. Seriously, there's like 6-something companies making fully playable versions of arcade games you can, jeez, fit in your pocket. Let's start things off with Tiny Arcade. These are by far the cheapest of the bunch. I believe MSRP is around 20 bones or so, but I always see these at Walmart for around 13 bones a pop. The world's smallest arcade cabinets. Yeah, they got an ego over a tiny arcade and they're not afraid to show it. Each cabinet comes with a keychain. This is definitely just to reiterate how small these are. Like, wow, they're so tiny you can fit them on your keys. But seriously, who's gonna do that? Oh my god, I gotta drive to the hospital. Let me get my car key. I ended up ripping the keychains off of most of these. They really dig into your palms while playing them. But really, like, I'm just cool with throwing these on a desk, and the keychain's a bit of an eyesore. Now, turning these things on, they're the real deal. They are playable. Just probably not the most ideal method of playing. So we got the Namco classics, Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, and yeah, they are pretty faithful to the original games. But there's this large amount of choppiness to it all. We can see it the most with Galaga. Just look at how the enemies come down. It's not nearly as smooth as the original. The simpler games work the best on these units. Pac-Man works surprisingly well, but that game, you only use the joystick. Stuff like Galaga, you have to mash the fire button and rock the joystick back and forth. And yeah, it's Galaga, starring my thumbs. The simpler games, whether they're slower paced or require fewer control inputs, work the best in this form factor. But the thing is, you aren't buying these to be your one-stop shop for Dig Dug. You're buying these for the novelty of owning an incredibly small yet playable version of an arcade game. They have a lot of variants of these things out there, including cocktail cabinets. Why? Well, let's say Tiny Arcade is a bit too tiny for you. You want to beef things up. You want a miniature arcade cabinet that's not a laughingstock. Well, keep looking. The My Arcade cabinets are a bit more pricey. These you generally find in the $20 to $30 range. So first off, I really do prefer the larger form factor here. This is like the perfect size for a desk toy, which is pretty much all I consider these things. Now popping in an embarrassing amount of batteries and turning this thing on, we're greeted to son of a bitch. For pretty much all the My Arcade releases I've come across, they ain't using the original arcade versions of these games. They're using the NES versions of these games.
Yeah, I'm pissed.
Now in most cases, the NES versions of these arcade games, they're fine, they're doable, but they don't feel as good or as fun as the original arcade. It's the little things, sound effects, music, graphics, even control in a few cases. They're just different enough to make these not nearly as good. But then we have a feature turned nightmare, the screw-on, screw-off joystick. Now My Arcade must have been proud of this one. It's a big feature according to the box, like most consumers flip their shit when they see this.
Whoa!
But this is just a bad D-pad with a stick screwed on top. It doesn't give you the precision of a regular joystick, and just using it as a D-pad, I mean, who wants to play Pac-Man with a D-pad? I gotta be honest, my thumb started to hurt after playing this. I'm really not impressed. Now, I'm sure somebody must be saying, well, Scott, that's just Pac-Man. You should try Karate Champ.
Who the f said that?
Yeah, this is rough. I mean, My Arcade's not totally at fault here. This is Karate Champ from the NES. It was already a bad game. Not much My Arcade could do there, except give it lame controls and advertise this as if it's the arcade version of Karate Champ. Well, to round things out in terms of the budget mini arcades, here we have the Arcade Classics line. Weirdly enough, whenever I see these, they're never with the video games like Tiny Arcade or My Arcade. They're in the toy section. And that's all I ever saw these as. Super cheap toys. These were the real deal, and these were in the goodie bags on the way out. I say that because I primarily associate these toys with this. Yup, a cheap monochrome LCD screen. Sure, the sounds were there. Oh, come on, these came out within the past 4 years. These are comparable to the mini arcade cabinets made by Coleco in the 1980s. You can't tell me this was the best they could do. This is ridiculous. Well, they actually prove their worth later on. This Tetris one, while it's not a full color screen, it is lit up and is a fully playable game of Tetris. However, I will say the button labels can be kind of confusing, like put the labels underneath the buttons. But now they fully updated these things and have a pretty big lineup of games. Pac-Man. My god. It's actually Pac-Man. The joystick isn't anything to write home about, but it's serviceable. These things are big enough to play on comfortably. Plus, they even have a Mortal Kombat one, ages 13 and up. See, when I accidentally only have my fake ID on me that says I'm 2 and need to buy a Mortal Kombat game, this one won't require me to show my ID. It's the perfect crime. These are legitimately pretty good, and they're around the same price as the My Arcade micro players. Now, where these falter a bit is the design. I don't know, I prefer the look and feel of the My Arcade ones. These do feel a bit cheaper. Like, My Arcade uses the original arcade cabinet design, which is pretty cool, and this just looks like a fun night in Photoshop. But yeah, these ones surprise me, they ain't that bad. The My Arcade ones are sort of lame, and the Tiny Arcade ones bring in the most novelty fun ha-has. But those are just the budget ones. What if you get bored and want to take out a loan? Well, there are the full-blown replica arcade cabinets. These are like these, but are far more faithful to the original arcade cabinets, and 7 times more expensive. The Replicate Centipede cabinet is a solid $150, but it's not some screw-on D-pad looking thing, it's a legitimate recreation of Centipede with a working trackball. There are also these quarter-sized cabinets made by a different company, but they're just as, if not more, high quality. Like legitimately, they are exact replicas of the original arcade cabinets, but a quarter the size. So these are obviously for the more hardcore fans or collectors. They are a tad bit bigger than the budget ones, which makes them that much more legitimately enjoyable to play on. But I'm a simple man and have a thing for arcade 1-up. They make cabinets that you can put together yourself, are around $300 and are big enough to feel like an actual arcade cabinet, though they are 1/4 smaller. It has always been my dream to own my own arcade cabinet. Good dream, right? An arcade 1-up makes the perfect machines for at-home use in my opinion. Now I've already talked about my Galaga machine, but I recently bought one of their countercades, which are much smaller. And this is still pretty nice. The stick feels good, the screen's not the greatest, it's a bit washed out, but this is classic Pac-Man. It runs and looks great, it's $200. Okay, that's a bit much. I can somewhat understand the high price for the replica units, but this, for how the screen is and only containing Pac-Man and Pac-and-Pow, which I can tell you right now, no being still alive has ever said, let's play Pac-and-Pow. For $200, you can get a PS4, an Xbox One, a Switch Lite. You can't tell me this thing is worth $200. Everything feels fine, but not like overtly high quality. I'd say $100 to $150 would be good for this. Now there's a few of these other little handheld game devices for sale. Now this one's really cool, the Oregon Trail. I live and die by this game, and while this isn't the easiest way to play, it's still really cool to have a little portable Oregon Trail machine. It looks like an old computer, and it's still the Oregon Trail. I like this one. But alongside all the other retro gaming merchandise, I almost always see other stuff made by the same companies that fall in the same general category, and these being more so very cheap game consoles. Like my arcade has this little handheld, Miss Pac-Man, great. And it's the NES version. Oh! Like this wouldn't be that bad. It's a $20 handheld with 3 Namco arcade games on it, but who the hell said put a disc on it? This isn't fun to control any game with, let alone Miss Pac-Man. It really blows because the rest of this unit is honestly fairly solid. I saw this thing, the Go Retro Portable by Retrobit, and it's a Game Boy knockoff with a bunch of NES games on it alongside bonus games. These are literally just simple garbage games that are put on devices like this. This is where you go to play some burbles. This is very similar to a lot of those bootleg consoles you find online where it looks just like a Game Boy and comes with a bunch of stolen NES games alongside games like Burbles. But the weird thing about this one is that all the NES games are fully licensed. They're legally here. It's pretty cool they got a lot of Capcom stuff like Mega Man and Mighty Final Fight. There's Burger Time, a version of Tetris. This isn't the worst deal out there. It was only like $30, but the D-pad just isn't that great. Just going through the menus, it misread my inputs quite a bit. My arcade has a few of their own dedicated handhelds like this, and oh shit, they're bad. All of these devices are literally the Retrobit handheld if the Retrobit handheld didn't have the licensed good games, just the terrible bonus ones, like Burbles. It doesn't make any sense. My arcade has the licenses for a lot of arcade games, but they just used a bunch of Burbles wannabes. Well, the cheap retro toys aren't seeming to die anytime soon. Every year it seems there's a new $20 plug-and-play system that's stupid, dumb, and stupid like the Legends Flashback by At Games. This is terrible. Like, they messed up the controls for Tetris on this thing. Is that even legal? But the little retro knickknacks are cool to see pop up in the stores. The Pac-Man Lite, that's pretty cool, but what does it look like when it's on? What the f***? You see a lot of mugs, like this one. It's a gold Zelda cartridge. This is exactly what I mean when I say fun to look at, a bitch to drink. Little tchotchkes like playing cards and coasters, card games and board games, shirts to wear. Sure, not all of this is of the highest quality, but it's cool to see this hobby of mine that I once thought was too niche appear across some of the biggest stores out there. To see places like Walmart and Target give a piss about Burger Time, it's nice. Even though a lot of this stuff isn't for me, it's really cool to walk into these stores and see all these kind of products. And not only that, but see them do well. It's nice to see this thing I would have almost been embarrassed to call a hobby of mine a decade ago become so widely accepted and cherished. Now at this point you may go, Scott, that's great, you like gaming merchandise. Have you played any actual games recently? I bought a Roomba if that counts.